Good evening, everyone. We begin the readout tonight with breaking news. The U.S. has launched new airstrikes against Iran-backed targets in Iraq and Syria in retaliation for a drone attack that killed 3 American soldiers. Here's the first video that we're seeing from the region. An Iraqi security official said a U.S. airstrike targeted a weapons warehouse and 3 houses belonging to Kataib Hezbollah in Anbar province in western Iraq. The strikes come the same day President Biden attended the dignified transfer of the soldiers killed in the strike in Jordan that the U.S. has attributed to Iranian-backed militant groups. Late today, U.S. Central Command posted that forces conducted the airstrikes against Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Quds Force, and affiliated militia groups. U.S. military forces struck more than 85 targets with numerous aircraft, to include long-range bombers flown from the United States. President Biden released a statement saying, in part, quote, "Our response began today. It will continue at times and places of our choosing. The United States does not seek conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. But let all those who might seek to do us harm know this: if you harm an American, we will respond." Let me bring in NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons in Iraq, NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell, New York Times Pentagon Correspondent Helene Cooper, and retired Lieutenant General Stephen Twitty, former Deputy Commander of U.S. European Command and an MSNBC military analyst. Keir, I do want to start with you. I think it's important to know who these groups are. If you can tell us who it is and why is it that they are located in Iraq, of all places?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think, first of all, this operation tonight by the US is going to put the spotlight firmly on just how embedded Iran and its proxy groups are in this region, in Syria principally, but also here in Iraq. Just the scale of it will tell you something about the scale of how Iran has, frankly, in many ways, taken over here, particularly in Syria, in recent years. Now, you mentioned Kataib Hezbollah, that group that was targeted. Now, that is the group that is accused of carrying out the drone strike that killed those 3 US service members at Tower 22. It happened in Anbar province, and that is along that border between Iraq and Syria. It's in Iraq, and then up to the border with Jordan. Of course, Tower 22 is there along that border with Jordan. So that is one target that we know about, and we're having to piece together here, by the way, what we're being told by the US and what we're hearing from reports here in the region that aren't confirmed, but seem to make sense. So there is that part of it, and then there is another part of it inside Syria, Mayadin province, governorate. Now, that is a place, and around it, that is a place where we also know that there are a lot of these Iranian backed militia. In fact, there is actually a Iranian base along that line near that border, and that again it appears to have been targeted because we've heard about the explosions there and things. In fact, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which began during the Syrian civil war, monitoring things, says that there are 17 sites that have been targeted there. So what more does that tell us? Well, it actually tells us, that while this is a powerful operation by the US tonight, it is also limited, it seems. It may be the first wave, but we haven't heard about strikes, for example, around Damascus airport, just as an example. And we know that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is there. We know that the Israelis have targeted places around that airport, for example. So I think that what we are seeing is both an attempt by the Biden administration to send a powerful message to Tehran, and this is bigger than we've seen for many years, but equally, at the same time, it is a limited message, a message we are hitting the places that I think are connected to the killing of those US service members. The hope will be that Tehran will get the message that the US is prepared to escalate if it escalates. The danger is that Tehran will not shift from its strategy, which is to put pressure on Israel and also to try and push the US out of this region. And just to finish, talking about trying to push the US out of this region, here in Iraq, the risk is that this action puts pressure on the Iraqi government to actually do exactly that. Iraq is both a partner of the US and a partner of Iran. And we have a statement tonight from the Iraqi Prime Minister, who is talking about these strikes constitute a violation of Iraqi sovereignty, an undermining of the efforts of the Iraqi government, and a threat that will drag Iraq and the region into unforeseen consequences. Now, we should just caveat that by pointing out that Iraq, frankly, the Iraqi government does face in two directions, and it has made statements like this before when the US has carried out strikes in Iraq, and that's been pretty much the end of it. But it does underscore the many complexities and challenges for the Biden administration as it undertakes this operation to try to shift the needle in terms of the way that Iran has been behaving during these recent years, particularly, and at the same time not escalate to the extent you get a reaction from Iran and its proxies, and then things escalate further towards more of a regional war.
And I will just note that for our audience, the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he essentially has a posture of avoid a direct war with the United States, distance Iran from the actions of proxies who've killed Americans, but prepare to hit back if the United States were to directly strike Iran. I just want to stay with you, Keir, just for one moment, because I think for a lot of people who if we could put the map back up, and we probably need like a bigger map, because if you could just briefly explain what is the relationship, Keir, because we know Iran has proxies throughout the region, clearly in Iraq, but also the Houthis, who we've been talking about previous to this, who are the ones who have been, attacking shipping lanes, but that's far south. It's not even on the map. It would be far down there. It would be in Yemen. What is the relationship between the Houthis and this group, Kataib Hezbollah, and Iran?
Well, they're different groups, but they're both Iranian proxies. These proxies are variously closer or not so close to Tehran, but basically they're backed by Tehran and sponsored by Tehran. And the strategy, the Iranian strategy, is to use these proxies to carry out these kinds of attacks that Iran then can't be blamed for. I mean, the distance, there's a purpose in the distance. It's part of the strategy. So that's why you see that map, and that's been the Iranian policy for a long time. You bring up the Houthis, and it's a good point to make, because of course one of the issues will be tonight that with the Houthis, a number of strikes, I think we're getting towards 10 perhaps, in Yemen against the Houthis, hasn't stopped them from continuing to try to target commercial shipping in the Red Sea. So that is a warning that despite these strikes tonight, there is a question mark over whether the Iranian militias, backed militias here will respond by backing off. And actually just this week you saw one of the groups, there's an umbrella organization, Islamic Resistance in Iraq. One of those groups said, we're going to stop launching these attacks. Another one today said, we're going to carry on. And we're going to carry on with our policy of putting pressure on Israel and trying to push America out of this region. It doesn't matter what you do.